Hi, everybody, and welcome to Talk with the Bay on KSQD 90.7 FM and live streaming at ksqd.org everywhere around the world. This is your guest host, Amy Chen Mills, filling in for Rachel Goodman today. And I'm pretty excited about our topic, which is homelessness in Santa Cruz City and also in Santa Cruz County. Although we're going to be specifically focused on the city at this time, we know that this is a huge, sprawling, complicated issue. And we have three people who I think are going to be able to speak very well to at least some major aspects of this issue. I'm just going to check in with everyone, make sure our mics are working too, because we're stuffed to the gills in the studio today. We have Evan Morrison with the Free Guide, who is also contracted through the Free Guide nonprofit organization to help to manage safe parking spaces, the newly proposed safe parking spaces for the city. And Evan, are you there? Can you hear me?
I'm here, yeah. And it's RV safe parking specifically with the City of Santa Cruz.
Okay, so the Armory is not going to include just regular cars. It's just going to be RVs?
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
The program is for RVs.
Okay, gotcha. And then we also have Reggie Meisler in the studio with us, too. I want to thank everyone for coming in here and getting here through the traffic. And Reggie is with Santa Cruz Cares, which is an organization that provides assistance and resources to the unhoused and also advocates. He's also been a part of appealing, for example, the oversized vehicle ordinance that the council majority has been trying to pass for, feels like about 9 months now, with several appeals by Santa Cruz Cares, Reggie Meisler, and the ACLU. Reggie, let's test your mic. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you so much for joining us. And then we also have someone I'm going to call Frogbit, because this person does not want to be named for fear of possible hate attacks for the work that they've been doing with Cop Watch in Santa Cruz and also with the Love Boat, which is a project of the Democratic Socialists of America. How are you, Frogbit? Do you want to say hi?
I'm all right. Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much. And I just want to mention that I think there was a big forum at the Resource Center for Nonviolence recently. Keith McHenry was speaking there. And this topic is so relevant and hot right now because the city is looking to try to start to close the benchlands and sweep everybody out of there. They seem to be taking a somewhat more measured approach than we've seen in the past with sweeps. We'll see what you guys think about that. And I want to, Joy Schendledecker, who is running for mayor of Santa Cruz, is part of Santa Cruz Cares. She also helped to start Sanitation for the People. So I think these are very relevant conversations going into the coming election. And Fred Keeley, who's also running for mayor, was at the meeting with Keith McHenry, which I thought was pretty bold on his part and pretty I don't know what the word is, but I know that his house has been protested by McHenry. So it was quite something for him to get over that and come and sit at that forum. And I really appreciate that from our electeds to really try to listen some more and learn some more. So we've got all this stuff going on. And we also have the oversized vehicle ordinance. And what I'd like to do is before we go to Evan, Reggie, I don't know if you want to add anything to your bio about why you do the things you do. On behalf of the unhoused, could you speak to that? And then I'm going to ask you about the OVO and where it is today.
Yeah, for me personally, I consider myself a socialist, so that means that I believe that housing, healthcare, education, retirement, these kinds of things are human rights that everyone deserves. And I see things like OVO and CSSO as not only a criminalization of poverty, but sort of reinforcing stigmas and creating a kind of a caste system.
Okay, and so the OVO, for those who aren't familiar, which I would assume a lot of people would be at this point because it's gone through several iterations at the City Council and then went to the Planning Commission, where it did not pass without some serious amendments, and then went back to the council, and then went to the coast, where the council rejected most of the amendments, went to the Coastal Commission, and they have also rejected the OVO from what I understand. So I'm not even sure what the status is. But the idea is that actually, and I had just read the whole OVO, there will be no RV parking or vehicles larger or longer than 20 feet in the city of Santa Cruz anywhere unless you have a permit, meaning a permit that you can display on the dash of the vehicle. And this also means that, what the requirement is to get the permit is you must already have a home here. Okay, that's one thing. Or it's an out-of-town guest, and they must be from out of town. So what this basically amounts to, from what I can understand, is that no one who actually lives in their homes, because P.O. boxes will not cut it, can actually park anywhere in the city of Santa Cruz. And so then the idea is, and this is how it's been presented. Well, actually, let's go to the status first. Reggie, what's the status of this now?
So what's happened is it's gone through several layers of appeal. And at this point, the Coastal Commission had a substantial issue hearing. So what that meant is that you had to prove using 5 particular arguments that the Coastal Commission should take control of the permit process. That means that normally the city can just kind of give themselves a permit to operate in the coastal zone. So we appealed to the state until they sort of use this meeting to determine, okay, we're not going to let you just give yourself a permit. We are going to decide whether you get a permit. And so that meeting about whether they should get a permit is going to happen as early as 3 months and as far away as 9 months from now.
Okay. And one of the things that I've had a hard time with sort of watching all this and having run for office against one of the people who helped to write the OVO, Shebra Kalantari Johnson, is I was watching some of these council meetings, and the way that the OVO is presented is as if we are helping people who are unhoused. And everyone who's against it is blocking progress for our wonderful efforts to help people who are unhoused. So this is where I find it confusing. I feel like it's hard for us to decide who's on what side when it's presented this way. But we do have someone here. His name is Evan Morrison, and I have met with him and spoken with him, Evan. And you have worked, my understanding is your background is you have worked with chronically unhoused people. You've worked with unhoused veterans in the past. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you came to be doing what you're doing with the free guide, which started out as handing out like a list of resources for folks who are unhoused, to what you're doing for the city today and what you see the safe parking program. What is it? What's being offered?
Yeah, well, okay. So there are a lot of questions to answer.
Yeah. Sorry, that was like 3 in 1. Yeah. But I believe in you.
All right, great. So, I've been working with people who are homeless for almost 5 years. And for me, it really felt like it was time for another agency to be in the city and county of Santa Cruz providing services to people who are homeless. Uh-huh. And we've gone through about a 1.5 year long process of because for many years, the free guide was just literally the guide of services that we would hand out to folks.
Yeah.
And now for about 1.5 years, we've gone through the process of expanding our team and our agency to be able to provide direct services. And so we have this contract with the City of Santa Cruz to do RV safe parking.
Okay. And
what that means is that we will get approximately 20 RVs into this parking lot, and
into which parking lot is that? Because I know there's a few things going on here.
It'll be it is the parking lot at the Armory.
Okay, and the Armory, for those who don't know, is a space that's owned by the National Guard up near the De La Viega Golf Course.
Yes, and however, if you're listening to this and you're in an RV, don't just drive up to that parking lot. Get in touch with us, and we'll work with you to get in.
Yeah.
But it isn't just safe parking. However, we're providing services. We have case management. We have a very experienced team at working with folks to getting them into housing.
Okay.
And that's going to be the focus, and we expect to be able to do that.
Okay. And are you also in charge? There's like a pilot project on Cedar Street. There's a pilot project supposedly on Center Street. They're not being used. I have a friend who actually became unhoused just recently and bought an RV because that was the only thing she could think of to do. And then I called the city to try to help her get safe parking. And they said, well, you have to be out by 7 a.m. or something. And there's no bathroom. Do you know anything about those? There's a porta potty, like across the street from the parking lot, but there's no dumping, there's no water, there's no nothing. Do you know, are you running those too? Or who's?
No.
Okay.
No, as far as I know, those are city run.
Okay, so those are city run. And then the police station parking lot is also probably only nighttime, kind of emergency basis. Do you know about that one?
My understanding is all the city runs are overnight only.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And, so the 20 spaces are going to be 20 spaces at the Armory. What is the estimate, and anyone can jump in here, of how many RVs and rolling homes we have in the city? Reggie, do you know?
Rolling homes in the city, I think the estimate was something like 300.
Okay. And so there's 20 at the Armory. Evan, what do you think about that? I know you're not here to defend the city. I know you're a contractor with the city, but do you have any thoughts?
Well, do I have thoughts? Yes. So as of right now, we've been doing outreach for about 2 weeks.
Okay.
And we've got just over 30 folks on our wait list.
Uh-huh.
But our program is designed specifically for large vehicles.
Okay.
So we're not, we're certainly not tallying folks who are in cars. I'm very curious to see how long our wait list gets.
Right.
And that'll help us determine what sort of capacity is really needed for vehicles of this size in this city.
Right.
But there's a lot of estimation that goes on in homeless services, and I'm of the mind now that really we need to be counting individual folks who need assistance.
Not just numbers of cars or RVs. Is that what you mean?
No, I mean not not settling for estimates. Literally attaching. Okay, this person by this name needs this assistance.
Right.
Because there are a lot of estimates that float around for all kinds of services for people who are homeless, and I don't know. I think if we want to end homelessness in Santa Cruz or Santa Cruz County, which I do, we're going to have to get to know each and every person.
That's right.
And we may as well start doing that now.
Yeah, and that's what I picked up in my run for office was, here's a couple things. One is the point-in-time count. No one believes it, for one thing. So even though it's the measures we go to the most to try to understand how many unhoused people we have and what are their what are the conditions of their lives and what are they going through. If I was talking to a voter about how many people actually became unhoused in Santa Cruz, 70% is what the point-in-time count says, they would not believe it. And so having talked to also people at Housing Matters, executive director, and so on, and also having read a lot of articles about this, that getting to know our unhoused population and educating the public about who these people are, and also tying homelessness to the housing crisis, which a lot of people still don't do in their minds. They're like, oh, all these people are drug addicts, or, really there's so many people sleeping in their cars and in their RVs who are actually working for you at the restaurants that you're going to eat at and so forth. This is what we're dealing with, right? So, so a database is really super important. And I want to get to some of the sort of more hardcore questions. So clearly 20 parking spaces is not going to be, and only for our larger vehicles, is not going to house people living in their cars or RVs, all the RVs. I don't know how many RVs are out there. Does anyone know? No. Do you know, Evan, by any chance? No.
But that is the goal, however, is to find out. That's why we want to make sure everyone knows about this program, so that at least they can get on the wait list, and then we actually know. Okay,
but you already have 30 for 20 spaces, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
So your wait list is going to be a lot longer than the number of spaces you have for people to park. Now, given that, and we're going to get to the benchlands out right after the half-hour mark, but I want to talk about what I call reality. This is how I am about climate too. Okay, but what is reality? And what I want to throw out there is that, when I talk to people who have authored the current OVO, what they say is, well, people on the west side, on Delaware or near Schaefer or anywhere in that area, and they can be many blocks away, frankly, are upset because there's dumping, there's and so I'm going to put out the arguments here, and I want to hear what people have to say. And there's possible drug use, and there's possible crime, and someone was found dead, at one of these like mini strip malls on Mission, and so I'm not espousing these views. I'm just saying this is what I have heard from people. And so, do we, from any one of you, have a concern about homeowners? Is that, or how do you think about these things? This OVO is modeled on the same kind of ordinance in Santa Barbara, where they also made it illegal to park on Santa Barbara city streets. And if you, yes, tell me what you think about that. Yes, and Frogbit.
Yeah, so there's a host of issues with all of those arguments, but for the most part, I think it comes down to all of these issues could easily be solved by the city helping people and giving services to people. So voluminous trash, for example, which is not quite as voluminous as people sometimes claim, but if the city had adequate garbage services for people, there would not be voluminous trash. For example, about 2 years ago in San Lorenzo Park, the city claimed that, particularly Martin Bernal, the city manager at the time, claimed that there was lots of trash in San Lorenzo Park, and for other reasons they would evict. And they had no trash services at the time in San Lorenzo Park. In fact, there were garbage cans, but they were not serviced in the park since the camp was established. And so people had no choice but to pile up trash in the camp, or to truck it blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks away to the nearest dumpster, which people did. And people in the community living in San Lorenzo Park put in lots of effort to organize each other to do regular cleanups and drag garbage bags by hand half a mile away. And with all of these other issues too, like drug use, we see in every case that we've looked at that the war on drugs, criminalizing drugs, has a negative effect. It makes the problem worse. During the prohibition of alcohol, we saw, well, when we made alcohol illegal, what happened was people aren't going to go to the store and buy a beer. They're going to say, it's not worth it to risk being thrown in jail for a beer. I'm going to get some extremely dangerously high alcohol content alcohol. And so then more people are getting addicted, and more people are dying from alcohol overdose. So then they made it illegal since it backfired. And we see in Portugal, a while ago, they had this absolutely astronomical percentage of people addicted to opioids, and percentage of people getting STIs from injectable syringes. And so they said, okay, we've tried everything. What we're going to do is we're going to provide hospitals where people can get opioids injected by doctors.
Right.
And they can get counseling in a supportive environment, and they can even get free drugs. All drugs are decriminalized, and they saw the rates of drug addiction, use, and deaths plummet.
Right. So your example is Portugal. Mm-hmm. You were saying needles give you STIs. I didn't know that.
So it's if you don't have access to clean needles, then you might be sharing needles with people, and so which is really dangerous for various reasons. But if you share needles with someone who has an STI, blood can be on it and can be transferred to you, like
HIV or something like that, or hepatitis. Yeah. Okay, gotcha. So this is something that I have been, why? Sometimes I'm like, why can't we have good things? these are quote unquote best practices that get a lot of pushback in our community that is supposedly known as a somewhat liberal, quote unquote progressive community. But that's not the policy that we see coming from the city or the county at this point. I know in New York they've started, what is the name of these programs where you can go and use drugs in a sort of a facility that's kind of official and clean and well lit? What are they called? Is there a name?
Injection
Evan?
Sites, I believe.
Okay, injection
Safe
sites. Okay, right. So I know it's hard for people to get their minds around this when they come from a different way of thinking. And this is why I wonder if we need to be willing to have more dialogues across political divides. The acrimony I've heard at city council meetings, it's very intense, coming from like Santa Cruz Neighbors side and Santa Cruz Together side and whatever side, and then Santa Cruz Cares, of course. And it feels like right now, to me, it feels like the council majority isn't wanting to sort of give, to really listen to all sides. That's my issue with the council majority right now, is that they're just sort of like, well, we're in charge and we're going to do it this way. Reggie, do you or Evan, do you guys want to comment on, just what I call reality that people, if we actually criminalize living in your RV on the streets of Santa Cruz, where are people going to go?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in on that.
Okay.
So that is, I've been doing this work for about 5 years, but it's been consistent throughout the history of Santa Cruz, at least the recent history of Santa Cruz, and that is that we have yet to establish, okay, if someone is homeless, where can they be and be safe? And just be while they're doing what they need to do to end their homelessness.
Right.
And that's why, I'm excited that we're doing RV safe parking, because that's a step in that direction.
It is a step
to provide that sanctuary for a small number of people,
right, given.
But we're making a step in that direction.
Right.
And I do have sympathy for the folks who are like living in their neighborhood and suddenly there's an RV parked in front of their house. I can imagine that it's upsetting to buy a house in Santa Cruz and think, okay, great, I'm living in this great ocean community, and walk out your front door and see someone living in front of your house injecting heroin. I can sympathize that that's upsetting.
Right. And I just want to say here, that's not what everybody's doing, who's living in their RVs. It may be what, a few people are doing, but, this friend of mine who ended up in her RV on Schaefer in Delaware was like, we are not, she just felt so emotional about like, what do you think I am now? Go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, thank you for interrupting. Because that is, I bring up those examples because those are the examples that people remember.
Right.
That's definitely not the majority of folks who are living in RVs.
Right.
And you touch on so there are a couple of things. Is as a city and as a county, I think we need to start thinking about where can these folks be, where they can be safe, where they can do what they need to do,
right, and
not be disrupting, other people who, they thought their life was going to be a certain way when they moved into the house that they were living.
Right.
And, something else that you brought up that I think is important to mention is the amount of stigma that people who are homeless face and the amount of embarrassment that they face.
Yeah.
And the amount of judgment that they feel from the housed population.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us don't really appreciate how easy it is in today's, at least in this region, to become homeless. Any one of us, that can happen to any one of us. And it's easy to look at people who are homeless and be like, that would never be me. And it's really not the case anymore. And I think personally that it's important to remember that all of these folks, whether we're housed or not, we're all part of the same community. And as a community, it's really important to have each other's backs and to lift each other up when we fall. I personally want to live in a community that would lift me up if I fall. And let's just make that our community.
Right. Okay, so this is a beautiful sentiment, Evan, and I know that you're contracted with the city, so you're working with Matt Huffaker probably, and Larry Imwal, and maybe possibly people who wrote the OVO. And I'm going to ask you, do you think that people in the council majority right now could sit down with people from Santa Cruz Cares and the Love Boat and have a conversation? Okay, Reggie's saying no. Do you think that those people actually do care? Because I hear that a lot. We do care.
I don't know.
Okay, I don't know.
I've had multiple conversations with Shebra.
Okay, well, I wasn't mentioning her, necessarily, but she's definitely one of the authors.
Just because you brought her up, but I haven't had conversations with the other folks on City Council, and but my answer is still I don't know. I personally feel like it's important to be talking to everyone who cares about this issue.
Yeah,
and I reach out to Santa Cruz neighbors multiple times, and I've never heard back from them.
Okay.
And I really want to be talking to those folks. Okay. I want to hear their opinions, and I'm not getting them. Okay.
So Reggie Meisler with Santa Cruz Cares, tell me what you think. Do you think you could sit down and have a conversation with Renee and Donna? I mean, because this is the majority right now. These are the people who are crafting policy and improving policy, whether it comes from the staff or from them. What do you think?
Well, to be quite honest, Santa Cruz Cares did sit down and have a Zoom conversation with Renee Golder. I believe Shebra was there. I believe Sonia Bruner was there. And, it kind of just amounted to them sort of asserting their position, us asserting our position, and us trying to sort of ask questions like you would, where are people going to go? And I think what it really amounts to is that to some people, certain folks are not a constituency. They just aren't, right? People say, we need to protect our families, and they don't mean the unhoused families. They literally verbally remove them out of human existence. You know what I mean?
Out of their humanity.
Yeah. And so I think that's really what it comes down to, is that once you reach a certain level of poverty, you truly are not thought of as a person who has any value.
Yeah, I want to get into that, because that is kind of what I see as the way the dialogue goes, and how can we shift that dialogue? And also there are these other questions if we provide all these RV spaces and safe parking spaces, then is everyone going to come from all over the state? Is this something we need to think about? Do we worry about this? Do we need to care? Or should we just be givers all the time? This is, devil's advocate position. I want to hear from you. We're going to go to a break right now. You are on KSQD 90.7 FM. You're listening to Talk of the Bay with Santa Cruz Cares. We're with Frog Bit. That's a pseudonym. A pseudonym, is that right? I was going to say acronym. No, it's a pseudonym for a person who actually has, I think, been at the sort of juncture of police trying to move people out, perhaps many times. Let's talk about that in a minute. And is with the Love Boat, the Democratic Socialist Love Boat program, to provide assistance and resources to the unhoused, and also Cop Watch, which may be somewhat controversial. We'll get into that. We're also with Evan Morrison in the studio. We have a lot of people in the studio with us today talking about Evan Morrison is contracted with the City of Santa Cruz to provide one of the first safe parking programs that we've ever had. And I'm going to take a little credit, because I think that the Santa Cruz homelessness committee that I was a part of with others helped to, and it was one, honestly, it was one of the third committees that the city had, created, but maybe finally they started to think, maybe we could provide some things. What we're not providing are tiny home villages and managed encampments and all these things that I think we need something at this point, because what's going to happen when they go into the benchlands, which they are now, and start removing people. And I think that there might be a difference now, especially after Martin versus Boise and the Ross Camp debacle and other, and activist work and so forth. They are not, I don't think they're going to sweep en masse. What are we hearing, Frogbit, about the benchlands?
Well, from my perspective, it's all speculation at this point. It's so previously, the city had planned to evict San Lorenzo Park, and there was just word going around that they were going to kick everybody out in about a month. And then they changed their mind. They said, "Never mind. Maybe we'll deal with that later." And then they started inching into the camp from the edges. And then they started putting notices on people's houses scattered around the camp. And it was pretty clear with the first group of people that they have evicted that the strategy was going to be a boiling the frog type of strategy, where they're not going to evict everybody at once and make this whole big event of it, but they're going to try to go under the radar and prevent the resistance that was met to them last time by doing the eviction piece by piece.
Okay, well, so Larry Imwall, though, is saying, well, we're not going to move people because this is what Martin versus Boise is about. You cannot move people and just say you can't be here camping if you don't have a place for them. Do you think, I mean, how many people do you think, the city's saying they're like 200, 250 people at Benchlands. Anyone got some numbers?
That sounds accurate to me.
200 to 250. I was thinking it was more like 300 or 400. But okay, so 250. We have how many new sites going up at the Armory? Is there 70? And that's all we have.
Yeah, so there's a few things about that. I mean, first off, the thing about the law is it's not a law of physics, and the police break the law on the regular every day.
Mm-hmm.
And
what do you mean by that?
I mean, so, for example, very regularly, Cop Watch and everybody else involved will see the police evict people without giving proper notice, or we'll see the police arresting people without reciting their Miranda rights. The other day, a comrade witnessed a few police officers groping a woman while arresting her.
Oh.
And they break the law in various ways every day, and it's just normal.
Okay, so now tell me more about what you do through quote unquote Cop Watch. You are going down to the Benchlands, and what do you do?
So the main task of Cop Watch is to observe and ideally film the police for a few reasons. Primarily because when the police are on film, they act a lot less violent. Still violent, of course, but a lot less violent because they have the community eye on them. And so you can visibly see, like one time a few years back at Lot 27, when they were evicting people there, when protesters were there with cameras and eyes, then the police acted very nice. They were saying, okay, we'll come back. Do you want any coffee? And then they came back later in the night and they hit someone over the head with a baton.
Okay.
And so we film the police so that, A, they calm down, but also so that we can use that film in propaganda, in training, and sometimes in a lawsuit.
And so how often are you down there?
Every day, pretty much.
Okay. So you know the Benchlands well then?
Relatively, I would say so.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. So 70, wait, now, Evan, I assume you know, 70 spots for campers up at the Armory?
No, approximately that number for campers. It may plus or minus 10.
Okay.
In the Armory itself, there will be 60.
Okay.
Is what I just read.
Right. And then there's the River Street shelter, but that's full.
The River Street camping area.
Yeah, the river's not a shelter, but it's camping. And these are the kinds of things we would like to see more of. But River Street keeps opening and closing, and I don't even know if it's 24/7. Do you know?
Oh, it is. Yeah,
okay.
It's 24/7.
Okay, because 24/7 seems important to me. There are some things that to me are just so intuitive. It's like do unto others as you would have done unto you from the Bible. You know, like how can I feel stable and pull myself together, have some peace of mind, have some sanity if I have to be out of where I am at 7 or 8 a.m. every morning and have no place to go, nowhere to keep my stuff until 8 p.m. again. Even storage to me is a strange thing. It's like I'm put all my stuff in storage and then where do I go, right? And so... yeah, I mean, I don't know what I want to hear are some solutions, and maybe I should have warned everyone in advance to come with their best ideas, but what do we think that Benchlands, because even people like Brent Adams, who works with people who are unhoused, will critique the Benchlands and say, there's a lot of drug use, and there have been 6 fentanyl deaths in the last, few weeks or couple months at the Benchlands. So do we think Benchlands is great? No, we don't. Yes, we do. What do we do instead? So we're going to go to Evan, then Reggie, then Frogbit. Evan.
Yeah. So, in general, so as a service provider, for me, what really matters in terms of working with folks to get them housed is that they can be in a place and stay there and not have to worry about being moved every few months.
Right. That's right.
Really disruptive to people's lives. And it's also, for service providers, if you can find the people you're working with, it's easier to help them get housed. And, the reality of the benchlands is those people feel like they have no other place to go. And if I were to create something that's what I feel like would be an improvement, would be a handful of smaller encampments with supportive staff there.
Yeah.
But where would those be?
Okay, hold on. Because the advocates like McHenry would say, no, we can self-manage. We don't need any management. What do you think about that? Because I'm going to say I don't agree, but you go ahead. I could be wrong. It's just my first impression. I'm thinking mixed is what I think, but go ahead.
And I believe I'm actually quoting or approximately quoting Brent Adams when I say this.
Okay.
But without some sort of management, you do leave space for the worst actors to do whatever they please.
Okay. And what do you think, Reggie? I don't even know what question we're answering here, but I do want to ask you about what managed encampments mean or what your solutions are. Those two things.
Between these two things, I think what creates these conditions that Brent Adams or Evan are describing is the fact that you're not allowed to be in a lot of places. Like if we literally had the ability to be anywhere on public land, then people could move when they had problems with someone, and they could collect with the people that they know and they like, and there wouldn't be these problems. In the benchlands, the problem is that there is limited space that people are allowed to be, and it causes issues where you can't move away from a abusive ex-boyfriend or something like that. You can't surround yourself with the friends that you know because there just is like a limitation on that. And so I think making relocation easier, I think just making it so that you can be where it makes sense for you to be. And I think that's kind of where it comes from is that, this is a problem that we want to limit where people can be, but we also want people to congregate in the most optimal way possible based off of their needs and social relations.
Okay, so we actually have a caller on the line. Let's take this question and then we'll go to Frogbit, and actually maybe Frogbit can try to answer this question, hopefully. Hello, you are on KSQD, Talk of the Bay.
Hi there. Couple things. One, I wish you had a more balanced program where you had somebody from Santa Cruz neighbors or West Side neighbors.
Yeah, I thought about that. Maybe next time.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
That would be useful. But, water under the bridge. Number two is, there's this narrative that, we or whoever the enemy, the anti-homeless boogeymen are, hate homeless people. That's not true.
Mm-hmm.
How can you not have compassion for someone that doesn't have a comfy bed like we all do, doesn't have a toilet that runs 24/7,
right?
Hot and cold, showers. How can we not have compassion?
Right.
What annoys us or folks that are not homeless are the behaviors and the various anti-civil behaviors associated with homeless people. And unfortunately, it's the most visible segment of that population. Okay, you see the RVs on natural bridges in Delaware with their junk and flotsam and jetsam outside. You see open drug use.
Let me ask you a question. Do you want to say your name, or are you calling in anonymously?
I'm going to call in anonymously.
Okay, so I just want to, because I live in Santa Cruz.
Okay. No, this is Darius.
Okay, Darius.
Hi, Darius.
We had someone who guessed already. I appreciate your willingness to throw yourself into the fire here. I just want to share one thought with you before we go to the rest of the folks in the studio with me. I live on the west side. I do live on the upper west side, okay, and I've had to think about, would I be okay with, we actually do get RVs sometimes by Meter Street Park and that area, and I go down to Delaware quite a bit to walk my dog, and I go down regularly, in fact, just to check out the area, right? And when I walk by, like, this is just me, and I think I'm going to get some flack for this, I don't, like, I don't think all these thoughts that I feel like other people think. It just doesn't occur to me to get upset. Now, I don't live down there with young children, so I get that. But maybe that is a concern. But people don't scare me as much as they seem to scare others. Why do you think it bothers you more than it? Do you live on Delaware, or where do you live? I mean, you don't have to say exactly.
Actually,
but...
I'm with you. I find I'm not afraid of homeless folks.
Okay.
I walk the benchlands at least once a month.
Okay.
Talk to folks. When I go to the Demio Lane dump, I always do a loop. Check on activity. I talk to folks and saying, what happened? How did you get here? And the ultimate question is, you are mobile, okay? There are some.
Well, then some people.
Let
me just say, Darius. Let me just say one thing.
Without living.
I've heard you say this before. Actually, I think you posted it on my social media.
Right.
A lot of people.
Still gotten an answer.
People have ties here, like the woman that I know who became homeless. She works here as a housekeeper all throughout this area. So if she were to just up and move, she'd have no income.
And that's the kind of person we need to triage as first.
Okay, so you're
all the folks, because she's probably not on drugs. She's not doing nefarious activity. She's not.
And who do you want to have move out of town then? Let's be specific, and then we're going to go to our panel here.
The troublemakers.
What is that?
We're talking about.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, this isn't rocket science. You've got how many people down in the benchlands have multiple warrants? That there's petty theft. And you know what? The problem is, it's not so much homeless folks on non-homeless folks. There is probably more crime as a result of 2 years of the benchlands of homeless on homeless crime, rapes, steal, theft, and so forth. You hear the stories. But that's, I don't want to get to my 24/7 police presence with a trailer at the benchlands idea, but that's for another day.
Yeah, I don't think Frogbit's going to be supportive. Okay, but Darius, let me get to the panel. I want them to address these issues because what you're saying is not unusual. Having just walked many precincts, as you know, I hear these same concerns. So we're gonna, if you don't mind taking your answers offline because we don't have a lot of time. Thank you so much for calling, and I do appreciate your courage in bringing up the points. Thank you, Darius. Thank you so much. And who wants to respond? Evan, do you want to respond?
I don't know where to start.
Okay, well, anything come to mind? There are a lot of aspects to this. There's drug use. There's, Frogbit's going to say something.
Yeah, so echoing what Reggie said, so at San Lorenzo Park in particular that we're talking about, before the initial eviction that moved people from living in the actual park to living in the benchlands fairly recently, like a year ago or something like that.
Yeah.
Before that, people were able to space themselves out within the park. People created their sub-communities. People created their little niches as issues and solutions came up. If you were in drug recovery, then you could make your camp completely separate from any drug use. Or if you were in drug recovery and were at a particular stage where you didn't need to be separate from drugs, maybe you were weaning yourself off, then you could be in an area with people where that could happen. But then the city said, everyone's drug users, everyone's horrible. Let's kick everybody into these little squares that we prescribe in the benchlands. And so now there isn't that self-separation, self-quote-unquote management.
Okay, so you were observing this happening, is what you're saying, Frogbit, that people were actually self-managing and creating their own environments that were helpful and supportive to them. I wanted to go back to Reggie because we were talking about let's say city staff or county staff or social worker managed versus self-managed issues and solutions that you see, which I think are important because if we're going to criticize, right, we need to have solutions. So how about, do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are people who legitimately need things that they don't have access to, and they have complicated problems. Like if you are unmedicated, but you have extreme mood disorder or psychotic features of bipolar or something, then obviously your behavior could be, disruptive to other people. And there's a lot of a lot of folks who are poor or don't have resources often have some of these crossovers because it makes them poor, because they can't. It's hard to have a job if you have like extreme mental health issues and you can't afford the incredibly expensive medicine, incredibly expensive therapy health insurance won't give you, and incredibly expensive psychiatrists and all the things that are necessary to get even modest mental health things under control. But most people are not in that sort of slice. And I think it is unfortunate, but a lot of folks will use this very small section of people as a wedge issue to say that, not that we should particularly help those folks and give them everything they need, because, that costs money and resources. Instead, just kind of push them away, assume that behaviors that are like not as social as other folks, that there's no sort of source to why that's happening, just kind of label them bad, push them away. It costs too much money to actually like figure out what's going on there and how to resolve that issue in a more sort of humane way. So just evict someone because they're a bad actor.
Right. And I do want to jump in here because I also, this is sort of like people in mental health should know these things, right? People who are in social work should know these things, which is that a lot of people who have chronic mental health conditions have serious trauma in their childhoods and in their past. I know a woman who came home at the age of 13 to her family home up in Lake Tahoe. Her family had moved out entirely and not let her know. They were gone. Can you imagine what kind of thinking that generates in a 13-year-old girl, And so people are dealing with these very negative self-images and negative thoughts from the past and trauma from the past. And I think, even if we say, so someone's using drugs, what I used to say a lot in my training programs was, people are doing the best they can given the thinking that they have, which is often very negative and very self-defeating. And so then the drugs are just a way really to feel better. It's not like I want to do drugs and be a crazy person. No one really thinks that, And Evan, did you come up with anything you wanted to say in response to Darius? I mean, you don't have to, but just asking.
I'll pass on that for now.
Okay. If you do, just jump on in, okay? You're welcome to jump on in. But are we okay? Here's something that I think a lot of people on the conservative side of this issue think is like, well, will these progressive people or these activist people, do they believe in any kind of boundaries? Like, if someone commits a crime, if they're hurting others, do they go to jail? Do they get no? Is that a no? I mean, because for me, I'm sometimes I'm like, yeah. But our jail, the problem with our jail here, the main jail, is it's not going to be therapeutic. It is going to make things worse. Except for Roundtree, which I think is we should have a Roundtree up here and have it be very therapeutic. That's what I'm asking you two, Democratic Socialists. Tell me.
Yeah.
Are there any boundaries? Do you have any boundaries or limits on human behavior and when people should be restricted or incarcerated?
I think a big problem is that we are so used to thinking within this carceral capitalist system where we think of people as other, and there's always this false imaginary of away. We throw our garbage away and it's gone. No, it's in the ground or in the ocean. We throw prisoners away. No, they're locked in a cell in this horrible, horrible place. And so, and we don't have the mindset to even imagine that there are solutions other than locking somebody in a prison cell when they do something that hurts somebody.
What about well, this is what Newsom is proposing now, and it's going to happen, I think, is this for care, what's it called, the CARE Act or something, where people who have mental illness and who seem to be out of control will be actually incarcerated. But I mean, having worked in the jails, I can tell you there are programs in the jails. There are ways that and I'm just going to share this to get it out there. A lot of the inmates that I worked with said this was the best thing that ever happened to me. My life was out of control. Now I'm in there in a program with them where they're getting their GRE, they're taking classes, they got 3 squares, and it's not this main jail, which is a nightmare. So I'm just going to say that. But I want you to answer the question: is there ever a time when someone you would think should be removed from the public sphere, the public space?
There, perhaps, but not in a jail, and not by the government, and not by the police.
Okay, so by who?
By the community. I think everything has to be community solutions, and we cannot rely on, and in fact, we have to destroy by any means necessary the systems of domination that are the police, the government, and the state.
Reggie.
Yeah, I think effectively Angela sort of has said it in a very clear-eyed way. I think the problem with the state is that there is not enough checks and balances, no matter how many they try to put in. And an anarchist version of the state is really just a more democratic implementation, right? It includes more perspective, more voices, more accountability. Because when you go into care courts and a judge can just decide that, hey, you seem like maybe you have bipolar, and that means that you have to be on lithium. Psychiatry is a very fuzzy subject. That's true. I know people who have various mental health issues, and just a sort of here's your sort of standard medication, your standard care program. It will not work for them because of comorbidity, because of just the complexity and the spectrum of problems. And that's why we can't trust authority figures who have very little accountability in our system to come up with these very complex, very nuanced plans, and also to not take into account sort of the broader, people are going to get out of these caring systems and be pushed into an uncaring capitalist world afterwards where there's nothing for them. They've been isolated from society and they have no friends or community or family to connect with. Okay, I'm hearing you. I agree with some things, and I'm also like, how in the heck are we going to organize as a community to be able to, put people off to the side and give them therapy? We don't have that yet, and we have what we have, and that's where I feel like sometimes we maybe are departing from reality a little bit, but we'll have to have another show. Evan, do you want to jump in on this one?
Yeah.
You have 1 minute.
Yeah. I just feel like it's important to point out that accountability is really necessary. And accountability is one of the primary tools for creating growth. And so... Okay, and actually Frogbit is nodding here, so we've got a little agreement. Go ahead. Yeah, and so we can certainly... And there are two separate... in my view, there are two separate discussions. There's what do people need to be held accountable for, and then how do you hold people accountable? And yes, my mind definitely goes to maybe it's time to rethink how we've held people accountable in our society. I'm looking at restorative justice practices just in general. It's been very punitive, But also we do need to be holding folks accountable for the stuff that they do that damages other people. And as a service provider, that is something that we have to be doing on a regular basis in order to help our people grow, the people that we're working with, so that they can get into a better place. Well, and that's something that I saw when I was working in juvenile hall, for example. Some of the boys that I was working with actually needed they needed some limits to what they were, that's something that we, but this is a discussion that I think would be really good to talk about at another show, because it's really about philosophies of how people change and get better
And I think that we're not, if we were to really get into it, we might not be too far off, actually. But clearly, we have Santa Cruz neighbors, and they are actually we know they're much more tough love. They believe that people need accountability and consequences. I've heard that directly from people in that group. And so that's what we're dealing with here in Santa Cruz City. Thank you so much for being a part of our conversation on homelessness in the city. I wish we had more time with all of you. Maybe I can invite you back on another day. Reggie Meisler of Frogbit and Evan Morrison, who is with the Free Guide and is going to be working up the Armory. Please call him at 515-8665, 515-8665 to get on the waiting list. That's 831 area code for the Armory Safe Parking Program for RVs. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.